Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to the most unobjective, subjective tier list kind of dealy here for Final Fantasy Tactics. Something that I was promising to do years ago, and yeah, basically just had announced that if they ever release a FFT remake, or if they announce it or whatever else, I'll bother to get around to doing an FFT tier list. That took a little bit longer than I would have expected because of all the games I would have expected to see a revival. Definitely would have expected to see FFT long before we saw an Ogre Battle kind of a spiritual revival or a Tactics Ogre Reborn, but hey, whatever, here we are. So let's go ahead and get started with this thing, shall we? So before we really get rolling on this whole thing, I want to point out a couple of things. So first of all, when it comes to the whole tier list format and whatever else, this is not going to be like a power ranking or anything else. I don't really do those. I'm not really a big fan of min-maxing. So if you're looking for what thing can be like number crunched out hardest, if you just like max out 99s back in like friggin' Dorder City or whatever else, yeah, this ain't gonna be the list for that. The stuff that I like to look at is basically the overall design of the class, how fun it is to use, the coolness of its design in general, like how utilitarian are its moves, how well does it fit into the setting, you know, how much does it sort of vibe with the rest of the game and stuff like that. And so yeah, let's just go ahead and get going on this thing. To give you an idea, right? I have these specifically ordered out. Well, actually, I got like halfway through ordering it, and then I forgot to do the rest. But this is mostly ordered out in the order that I wanted to go ahead and cover things. As an example, like to give you an idea of how I score things, don't worry, we're not leaving Balthier right here. But like in the case of Balthier, right? In their particular case, their class is functionally kind of coming in as a redundant version of another class, essentially replacing Mustadio for all intents and purposes, being an improved version of his class. Statistically and functionally, he is basically just a straight-up replacement for Mustadio, so I would immediately rank him down for that design-wise. However, that intro cutscene immediately flies up to hell yeah territory because in his particular case, they put a lot of attention to detail in that particular scene. They made sure to stick to what the original character likely would have done in that weird situation. They made him, again, you know, kind of like fitting to where he was from. His class seems to mostly accurately represent what he's up to. Only played a little bit of FF12, but still planning to get to that at some point. But still, he seems to, as far as I can tell, correctly portray the character. Not to mention that that one line towards the end there, like the whole "I promise you my bullets faster" deal, is something I paraphrase whenever the kids get in trouble every now and then. Obviously not with a bullet, but still, like it's just a really solid line. Not to mention they have the monk using a sword there in the cutscene, and in that particular case, they took the weird cutscene quirk and they made it into an actual thing in the actual fight itself by giving him a quipped sword and a sword. A terrible decision, but a fun little detail that they respected. So for that particular thing, just due to the fact that he replaces somebody else, he still technically gets rated down one, so he would end up at traditionally great. Essentially a character that everyone's generally going to like. He does his job well. It's just that I personally don't feel that he sort of fits in as far as the placement of characters went. Personally, I think they should have redone Mustadio for Wodel, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. Again, personal opinion, we'll get to Mustadio in a little bit. Anyway, next up on the pile, just to give you an idea of what this bottom one consists of, would be Luso, the Game Hunter. So in his particular case, I love FFTA2. Like, his character and whatever else is just sort of there to make A2 happen. All the stuff that happens in A2 is just a ton of fun as far as I'm concerned. It's got a really great objective variety and whatever else. The way that he's set up here, okay, he would get 1 point up because the whole inbuilt poach thing is a solid reference to A2 in terms of how his character would function there, considering every time you kill something you get a crafting component. It's a good little nod to it. However, he is, once again, a basically copy-pasted class. He's just an improved version of the Chattersquire to some degree. I mean, he doesn't have all the features that Ramza does, but still, he's basically copy-pasted and whatnot. But it's the cutscene, man. That cutscene is weird on so many levels. Okay, so for one thing, I might be missing something, but I looked it up. I don't think you can get a behemoth spawn on that map. So the scenario spawn, the kind of scenario in general is he, and I mean an all behemoth spawn. So the scenario is basically he is being chased by like 6 or 7, something like that, behemoths in a desert, and then he's saved. That's kind of the Cliff Notes version. However, from what I can tell, you might be able to get some behemoths to spawn, but not there. Again, maybe somebody knows something I don't on that, but I'm just saying, apparently they don't normally go there, for one thing. For another thing, like, from what I can tell, okay, that's obnoxious. Apparently, there's a nice little ad at this point on on the tier maker thing that just like eats up your entire screen with some nonsense about apples. If you leave your mouse on about half of it, so that's dumb. Anywho, moving on. So yeah, this cutscene, right? So somehow weird spawn happens. Whatever. He's there to introduce the poach mechanic. Whatever. That's all well and good. Like again, the whole inbuilt poach thing. I like that as a reference, but during that scene, he's being chased by these behemoths. For some reason, his weapon decides to go break on this thing's head, which isn't like that doesn't accurately describe either game's mechanics at any point. That's just downright bizarre. You never see a weapon break on anything else. He literally is over there fighting turtles made of stone, and his weapons don't break. So why, why exactly is it breaking against this behemoth of all things? All right, so already kind of a strange detail. But at that point, Rams is off in the background. He has now decided to promote himself to ninja. Now this is additionally kind of strange, because one of the quirks of War of the Lions is that they randomly upped the requirements for a lot of the classes. That's either here nor there, neither here nor there. Some people prefer it, some people don't. I personally don't like the game flow changes that it does, but hey, whatever. Anyway, point is, he somehow now magically has promoted himself to ninja. He then throws a sword into the stone. That doesn't break it, but this behemoth's head apparently does. So he throws the same type of sword into the stone, and now Luso presumably goes and picks it up and then goes back to fighting. Now, two more questions arise from there, because now he's got an ice brand to counter said behemoths, meaning that he now comfortably goes and just, like, dominates everything that's there. For one thing, where did Ramza find an ice brand? Because sure didn't have one up to that point. And for another thing, why was that his solution? Like, if anything, if they wanted something that was a bit more, like, likely to have happened by that point, just, like, break out ye old black mage and just airstrike the things into dust. But okay. Sure, that's what we went with. But then we get into another funny detail in which they already were using battle music for that scene, and then they switch to lower-paced battle music as soon as the battle music starts. Just switching battle themes for no apparent reason. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. Some kind of miscommunication between the art team and the design team or whatever else, but yeah, very strange cutscene. But yeah, I'm going to personally vote him way down here for all of that pile of reasons. You might notice, by the way, at this point, that this list is for fun, so please don't be one of those folks that writes a bunch of angry comments over stuff not being hyper-optimized. It's just, it doesn't do anyone any good. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Alright, next, the Squire. Now, power-wise, awful. Starter design class-wise, beautiful. I love a lot of things about the Squire, okay? So for one thing, as far as the starter class, obviously they're learning just the basics, but I love the little detail of the fact that they're still kind of learning to use their weapon. No one trusts them with a sword and shield just yet. No one wants to give them, a shield or whatever else. So they're still figuring out their weapon. They're still learning. So no shields for them just yet. Additionally, the little detail that gain JP up is kind of on the tail end of the kind of expenses of that particular class. A lot of their stuff is relatively cheap, but they're only kind of offense increasing skill in the form of accumulate there is quite a decent bit more expensive than the other skills. But as far as JP gained up, if somebody sticks with learning all of the basics, they're going to get better at learning everything else. Like, narratively speaking, I really enjoy that. Balance-wise, iffy, but it does allow you to do a lot of cheesy stuff, so that's fine. Like, honestly, as far as JP gained being busted, it's one of those cases of, like, I agree, but it also kind of should be, you know? But I love how that little kind of narrative quirk right there, that little fun detail where it's just like, if they learned all of their basics, everything else will be so much easier. If they immediately quit out of Squire, everything else will be harder. It's just one of those little nice touches that I love about FFT, and that I love about a lot of Matsuno projects in general, because there's a lot of that stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and move on next to the Chattersquire, which usually goes up into Hell Yeah territory. I mean, it's basically Squire, but they also have a full full list now. Additionally, he gets heavy armor now, and additionally, he basically gets infinite speed. He is speed embodiment, the embodiment of speed, the embodiment of support. I just love the design of that class, that he took a look at all the other units with all their super powerful abilities and whatever else, and he's like, you know what? We can talk this out. We got this. We're good. A good inspirational speech, a little bit of speeding up, just trying a little bit harder. That's all we really need here. Forget all the laser swords. Like, I love how well that matches everything about the way he always approaches things. So, Chattersquire easily goes up there. Next, obviously into Hell Yeah territory is going to be the Chemist. Again, I love that we don't start off with a caster as one of your starters. It's a great little detail that you just have your field medic, basically. And not to mention the evolution that this took from the original, like, classic version of Tactics Ogre, where it was just basic soldiers, and then you got a healer as you went along, but it took somebody a while to learn to be one of those. In this case, just sort of having that field medic archetype is pretty cool. The fact that they have to learn their items, while in other games would not work in this particular context, it's kind of cool, because again, they're just kind of learning that knowledge as a word. This stuff might be a little bit more complicated. I love that this evolves into them drinking too much NyQuil and being convinced that they're a wizard. So yeah, great stuff there. Auto Potion is basically the game's unofficial easy mode. Like, I'm wondering if Auto Potion will be banned for that hard mode that they were mentioning for Tic Tacs. I guess we'll see when that happens. But yeah, no, there's a lot of cool designs I love about that set, and even aesthetically, holy shit, the pockets, it warms my soul. Okay, I love that many pockets. Like, I always got my dad vest on. I always got my cargo pants along with the dad vest. Like, I love my pockets. I love carrying way too much stuff, so I appreciate the aesthetic. Okay, next, kind of branching off of the Chemist. Mustadio. First one for exactly okay. This is a guy that, if they were, again, doing different stuff in Wodel, and if they're doing more advanced stuff for Tic Tacs, somebody please help this poor man out, because it's like they started designing him and then forgot where they were going with him. He's great for his little corner of the game. Like, you get him in Chapter 2, he's fine dealing with the undead stuff there, the whole break arm, break leg thing, great at a long distance. But he's designed as this, like, tricky machinist sort, and he's a sniper with 2 abilities for all intents and purposes, unless there's undead stuff. Like, it's practical, I guess, but just, dude, somebody show this dude some love. Even in Wodel, they're like, fuck this guy, friend zoned. No new skills either. Like, I don't know what Wodel had against this guy. They're like, we're gonna replace him, we're gonna give him no skills, we're gonna give him the Agrius cutscene. Like, why? Why do you hate this man? Actually, quickly, before we move on to the next one, it sort of felt like it's always kind of felt that with Mustadio, that he was just the guy that they were trying to use to create a trap mechanic or something. It's just, everything about him screams like this guy should be engineering some traps somewhere. His original name was Engineer. What gives? What's up with that? Anyway, let's go ahead and move right along here. Archers. Again, with the exactly okay in this particular instance. Like, they're a class that has features that I feel like would be more useful in almost any other context. Like, the ability to completely avoid avoidance, that's something, so capes don't have any effect on them. It's not the only way to avoid avoidance, but still, it's something. You know, they're going to be fairly accurate. You stick them on a flying chicken, they can fly their way up on top of a roof, or they make a fun little transition from, let's say, a dancer into an archer. Okay, all well and fun, you know. Give them the ability to fly, they land on a rooftop, and then they start sniping stuff. Oftentimes I see it mentioned of, like, you know, you gotta go for all the fancy craftable bows, or poachable bows and whatever else, but personally, I always like the elemental bows, largely because you could, you know, you always get that secondary effect on there. It always feels like there's gonna be something a little bit more at the end of that particular hit. I don't know, I think it's fun. Especially if you make them fast enough that they just sort of keep on firing the entire time. Those extra procs, I feel like they probably could go a little bit farther than maybe some of the heavy hitters, but hey, whatever. Again, I don't like hyper-optimizing for those single hits necessarily, but I like just kind of messing around with interesting mechanics. So, okay, again, a class that basically is never going to appeal that much, pretty much by any metric. Like, their charges, half of the dang charges, have no shot to hit whatsoever unless the thing is just basically stopped in place. So yeah, you basically have to dance around making their mechanic work whatsoever. I mean, even I was trying to screw around recently with a build that was just like a chemist with equip axes and charge, because why not? It just looks funny to see like this like little, little humble old villager lady with a battle axe going after somebody, and they're just like quietly sitting there squatted, like getting ready to go beat the shit out of somebody for like going and walking on their lawn. Anyways. So yeah, funny as it was, pretty much any other skill set ended up being more useful. Even with the axe being able to theoretically raise that damage reasonably far for the early game. Yeah, it's just their skill set is not particularly useful. Concentration can very much be replaced with many other things unless you like taking long range snipes from up front. It's good for stationary non-movers, and again, if you give them the ability to fly, park them up somewhere, you don't really need concentration anyway, so the skill itself is just kind of whatever. Longbow's good. Equipped crossbows is probably one of my favorite things in combination with a knight, or just kind of like battle skills in general. Just like all the break skills and what have you. Just because you can just put it on any decently heavy hitter class, give them a crossbow. They've got a decent bit of extra range on them. They suddenly are able to break equipment when you want it broken, essentially going up to like 60-70% odds in some cases to completely put a unit out of the fight. So I personally find that really useful. And again, you might be saying, wait, what about all the fancy knight swords or whatever else, just going and attempting to one-shot somebody or whatever else? I don't find that as fun as just like rando soldier guy ended up going and fully disabling somebody's equipment with a crossbow. It's just more satisfying to me. It's something that I always found a lot more interesting. It's one of those reasons that I love something like Felseal quite a decent bit. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, as far as that stuff is concerned, I personally value equipped crossbow more than the entire archer class, but hey, whatever. It's just kind of there. Longbows are fun. Let's move on. Alright, next for hell yeah, knights. I love those break skills. Being able to break equipment is just a lot of fun, and I've seen the argument before of like, well, then thief, they should just steal their equipment and then you have it. All well and good, they have no verticality restrictions. It's just whatever their weapon can touch, they can break, and I really appreciate that. So as far as thief is concerned, on a related note, I mean, like, okay, we basically have potential for full disability, the practicality of all of that, the practicality that with these wars of attrition, that the soldiers on either side, that their basic training regiment is to go and break the other's equipment because they can't fight anymore because they may not be able to afford another piece of equipment. The way that it actually reinforces that idea that the Squire was promoted into the Knight because they're the only ones that are going to have re-equip, and if they learn to re-equip it, then they can get around to this potential limitation that a lot of the basic soldiers in the area have. I love that from a design perspective. Lore-wise, that's so freaking cool. Anyways, it is an annoying mechanic to play around with, but seriously, I would advise you, if at any point you're one of these folks that just instantly reloads if you lose equipment, try playing around with that mechanic. You might find it surprisingly immersive. Anyway, sorry, we're getting all into the weeds here. But yeah, as far as thieves go, they require standing on the, basically the same, I think it's like only 0.5 vertical tolerance or something like that for a thief, in order to be able to steal their stuff. And I'm trying to find the thief in the pile here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, for the thief, okay, hear me out, okay? Because I like the poach mechanic. Usually you would just pick up poach, move on to something else. You'd pick up the steal skills, move on to something else. I usually don't care about growths whatsoever, but I've heard from several folks that apparently it's not even great on growths or whatever else. So as a class that's designed to be a sort of bridge to other places, that fits great, so it should be a bench warmer and whatever else. Not to mention, again, going back to the whole Felseal example, like, them having crossbows in that particular instance does give them a bit more staying power. In this case, they're limited to knives. Sure, they're pretty quick, you know, speed, attack, knives, all that kind of combo. That works out decently. Might have some decent luck with something like a thief, equipped thieves, something like the main gauche or something. You know, just dodging away all day. Could see that working, but realistically, at that point, there's a lot of other classes that can do that too. So I feel like they're kind of designed to be a bench warmer, and that fits because they're a thief. It's not meant to be like a long-term thing, even though their description mentions that they're like the stuff of legend. But realistically, it's just like you're going around stealing stuff because you have to. Kind of an idea. Let's see. There's that one fight with Orlin that they're downright terrifying because they will instantly charm two of your dudes. That's a fight that can end to RNG if you don't have a fast enough party. So yeah, either way, for the most part, it feels like they're designed to be a bench warmer, a temporary bridge class, and that works out nice. Okay, next up, reaching the stuff that you're probably going to be running by that point. Let's go into the next Hell Yeah territory, which is going to be Black Mage, obviously. Like, pop that shit right there. Walking Airstrike. Need to say no more. Not to mention, later on, if you're looking to set up particular combos or something, you need to, let's say, disable something on a map. Few things disable as reliably as to turn something into a toad. Also, I love the oddly specific detail of their stabs boosting particular abilities. Like, sure, you got the plus MA stabs and whatever else, but also there's the ones that are just better with certain elements. I feel like I don't know what the actual stats are, like what the stats differences comparing MA to the elemental stabs, but I feel like they last a hell of a lot longer than most other options. Like, I feel like they typically last up until, like, Chapter 4-ish, but hey, I might be wrong on that. Again, not huge on min-maxing. I just appreciate the simplicity of that dude's the lightning guy, they get the lightning staff, they get, or actually, no, we get the fire guy, we give him the fire shield, all of that kind of thing. I feel like it works particularly well, but either way. But yeah, that combination of turning somebody into, like, let's say you give them arcane strength, right? You actually, yeah, you go like arcane strength, you give them knight, you give them black mage. They got their really high health, but they just bum rush into a group, get their really expensive long-term fire nuke, and then they got their fire shield on top of them, and then just target themselves. Like, there you go. You just got a unit that's going to heal themselves, going to melt down everything around them, and it looks cool as hell. It takes advantage of that really... Okay, so, next one is one that I'm sure will get a few angry comments, but hear me out, alright? Agrius Benchwarmer. Why? Alright? Is Agrius bad? No. Statistically, offensively, whatever, defensively, solid unit. Overall, solid unit. But it's the the ways and means of how she's introduced, okay? So, now, obviously, everyone's pacing through the game is going to be a decent bit different. How advanced of units you run with, how much of anything you have with you. Everyone's pace seems to be a little bit different. But generally speaking, every time that I've gone through the whole thing, I've typically gotten Geomancers a bit before getting towards the fort explosion, right? So, as far as pace went, like, my first playthrough, I thought, wow, this is a really competent, strong unit. And then I wound up just completely not using her because of the ultra-limited range on her sword skills. Then later on, I played through again and insisted on using her because, hey, cool sword skills. And then still ended up benching her for Sid as soon as he came up. Like, okay, then after that, I ended up specifically making sure that there was always a party slot available for her first time I played through Wodel. And sure enough, all well and good. She was perfectly decent, and then still I felt extremely limited by the fact that she always needed to have a sword with her. Like, it's just it's one of these ones that really makes me value the samurai. Okay, I feel like that particular limitation in terms of weapons. There's only a few characters that justify how surprisingly limiting that is as far as creativity goes, because I value creativity a lot more than I do direct raw power. You might have potentially seen that from all these lists so far. That I'm not that interested in the numbers. I'm not that interested in how quickly they do the one-shot kills. I'm interested in just cool stuff you can do with them. And in her particular case, she's basically like a Geomancer with more attack power and way less range, and also a weapon limitation. So on that particular front, what I consider to be the sort of evolution of her thing, the sort of generic that somehow outshines her in basically every category, my next favorite's going to be the Geomancer. Not, like, immediately, absolute powerhouse. I also really appreciate the fact that with the whole attack up thing, when they actually swing their weapon around, it makes it look like they use two hands. to some degree they use that on the samurai, but I just think it's a really cool thing that they just look like they're being way more vicious with their weapon with that slight little animation tweak. The fact that their abilities have really good range, a really wide variety of different debuffs. Again, I appreciate that a ton. Yeah, we do have stuff, like all the Judgment Blade stuff, or not Judgment Blade. What am I thinking of? Which one is it that does the confusion thing? The whole Heaven's Wish to destroy all mind dealy. Why am I blanking on that right now? Well, apparently they're all wishing to destroy all mimes today. Anyway, moving right along though. Yeah, like to me personally, the wider access to just more types of debuffs, the utter chaos that these guys can sow at long range, and the fact that they're a battle axe specialist. Yes, battle axe are suboptimal, but I just appreciate them as just a stupid weapon category. I just really appreciate that. Like, they are a lot more random, but I love me some chaos, and they're just a beautiful chaotic unit. So yeah, they go right up there into hell yeah. From my book, actually next also for monks, like, you gotta love monks. They're limited in terms of verticality or whatever else, but like, they never need to upgrade their weapon. They're basically overpowered from start to finish. Not having a head slot, bit of a bummer, but just straight up broken for more than half their abilities. I love how even they're just like looking over at Mustadio like, yeah, you need a gun to do that. I can do that with my fist. They're looking over at the healer like, wait a minute, you have a chance to miss? I don't. Like, it's just so cool. Okie dokie, let's go ahead and move on next. So yeah, I meant to have the Mystic after this one, so yeah, Mystic just goes into traditionally great, has a good two-tail attack there, decently hittable, whatever else. Weapon category that's a little bit less easy to get a hold of. As far as their debuffs go, they've got a decent amount of them. Like, they're decently varied in terms of what they can do. The versatility is what I really appreciate about their skill set. It does kind of feel like it's not necessarily something you'd be running as your main thing that you wanted to go to. Sort of feels like a bit of a transitional class there. But with somebody that's got decent enough numbers, those debuffs can be very oppressive, as you may potentially find if you ever ran into that one, like, double Oracle / Mystic, whatever you want to call them, the double Oracle encounter at the falls there. There's one that can regularly just disable half your dang team, and you're just watching people bleed to death. So either way, that's just going to go there. They're traditionally great, not really a personal favorite, but though I will say there's one guy that left a very dramatic comment on one of the things. I was like, oh man, there's absolutely no frame rate difference between the PS1 and Wodal versions, and it's just like, my man, go compare the entire list of Mystic / Oracle abilities between the two and get back to me, okay? Anyways, let's go ahead and move on now to Better Oracle with Beowulf, and he's also just traditionally great. Basically, just improved Oracle in most ways, gets a lot of their same abilities, plus a few special ones. Not to mention he looks like Weegraph, and literally uses the exact same sprite, almost the exact same look. Dude's pretty freaking cool. You basically get him for free, already ready to go, and I appreciate that when it comes to the character that created their own sword skills, whatever else, kind of like it's some custom magic thing or whatever else, that he basically just went Mystic for his sword abilities, which again goes back to that whole thing of tying together Ramza with like his sword ability is his freaking tongue. The tongue became the sword. But yeah, it's just cool. I appreciate that he just went for all debuffs because he's, from what I understand, he's kind of like an in-universe cop, and if he's supposed to be there going and shutting stuff down, then that's a cool approach. I like that. Alright, next in the Hell Yeah box, I love me some bards. They go right up there next to the wizard. Mainly, you might have noticed that a lot of the stuff that I prefer is going to be on the more defensive side, and in his particular case, stuff like the Nameless song is just really good. Just like free rebirths just constantly, so if you like running a lot of defensive or evasive or whatever else units, just free stacks of debuffs every few rounds or so is very, very good. I love those kinds of things. It's one of those things that this is going to be very oddly specific, but if you've played Risk of Rain 2, they're kind of like the Lotus in that one. They're providing free just pulses of goodness for your entire team all the time. Not to mention, if you ever want some free absolutely AFK training for any class in the game, they're right there to provide. Seeing as any one of their regeneration moves is basically like the monk but better, and across the entire field, and nobody can touch them. And also, you can just combine them with a bunch of reaction abilities to potentially make that even more broken. Just have your monk standing in the middle, just tanking with auto potions while providing free health to everybody and free re-raises. It's busted in a very non-traditional way, and I appreciate that. So yeah, very fun class. I like them. Plus, there's something very satisfying about the HP and MP abilities, just kind of like going and just trickling out instantly across the entire field, unless you're playing the later versions. That just feels very satisfying. So yeah, there's that. Alright, next, for bench warmers, ye old basic priest that I forgot to get to the other day. The other day, / the other minute, / it was like 2 hours ago at this point. I keep walking off to go do stuff while doing this tier list. Anyway, why benchwarmer status for the priests? Yes, holy is great, all well and good. Yes, their undead thing can potentially be good against undead things. Also, there's just sort of a bunch of instant undead kill moves, so that's... I mean, you got that, plus also you got the whole Chemist doing their job 100 times better thing. To me, the White Mage / Priest is basically the skill thing that you employ for those situations when you constantly forget to restock at the store. Because they just sort of do everything the Chemist does, slower and less reliably. And especially something like Rays being reliant on the faith of the unit that's being revived, and a lot of times the people being revived are going to be your frontliners, and then you're looking at that situation like, yeah, they've got no faith but great brave. Oh shoot, they don't believe in their own ability to come back to life. This is a problem. So yeah, not to mention they also synergize really well with, frontliners that also would have low faith in a lot of cases, like Knight plus White Mage. Good traditional standard combo. Doesn't really necessarily work that reliably, but hey, if you forgot to restock on your downs, you forgot to restock on your downs. So I feel like this is one that's sort of used as a sort of like transitional class to other things, not necessarily something you'd stick around with in the long term. Like stuff like Reflect is... Actually, I think that's on... Wait, I always forget which thing Reflect is on because that moves around. Usually I feel like most folks would probably end up using the Reflect accessories. I know I always did, rather than trying to rely on spells for that particular thing, just because of how long it takes to set up initially, and you don't want to spend the MP to use it. It's just between MP limitations, between being slower, between being more fragile, between being less reliable than the class that it took to get there. The only reason I've ever kept White Mages around is for the aesthetics, because like as far as any particular units being kept around for their looks, like they're certainly up there. Yeah, I don't know. Not really. It never really felt like the White Mage was a particularly useful class, at least not by itself. Actually, let's go next. Let's go for the Time Mage. Personally, I would put them in exactly okay. They don't have the utter annihilation potential of something like the Black Mage there. Their buffs are fine. Personally, I just prefer to use Tailwind on something like the Chattersquire for making people faster. It's just haste can miss, slow can miss. If you're going for something like Don't Act or whatever else, a lot of that stuff is something that the Oracle can do in a cooler way. I don't know. They're just that combination of bland and unreliable that I'm just not a huge fan of personally, but... And I do mean... Okay, when I say unreliable, I just mean, like, they don't necessarily have anything to back up the thing that they were doing. Like, if you're going for, let's say, Don't Move, right? And you're just going and casting that ability, if they're not within range, if they don't have the MP for it, what are they going to do? Go hit something with their staff? Probably not going to be very good, right? Unless you gave them, like, a equip weapon of some variety, or they have something else. Like, it just doesn't feel like they have that many backup plans. Whereas, let's say something like the Mystic, they've still got their stick to go hit stuff. Something like the Chattersquire has proper equipment. Somebody like, Beowulf would obviously also be running proper equipment and what have you. Somebody like the Monk might have a million other options. It just, I don't know, it feels like putting all their eggs in a really lame basket, personally. But, oh well, whatever. Haste is good. I prefer getting haste from a bard, but hey, whatever else. It's fine. Sometimes we'll keep it as a kind of secondary on heavier units, just to kind of spam it whenever they've got nothing better to do, but it feels like a lot of their stuff requires a lot of investment. and also having your buffs miss is just really depressing to me, so we're going to put that there. Okay, next for traditionally great, we've got the ninjas. They're good at what they do. Dual wield is a great thing to have on hand. The whole throw command is very exploitable for a lot of different things. I was sharing a video the other day of somebody showing how you can get Excaliburs in Chapter 2 using it. Yeah, it's fine. Like, they're traditionally good. They're traditionally great at what they do. I don't really like using them personally. It just feels very standard, you know? Just like, I have weapon, but now I hit twice with weapon. But, I don't know, for some reason it just doesn't have that magic to me of, like, that time when a shield randomly saves your wizard from a bunch of arrows or something. Again, everyone's gonna have their own personal taste. I just prefer the shield over the second sword. I know it's probably objectively not statistically what's more efficient in this game or whatever else, it's just what I personally prefer. Anyway, next up into Hell Yeah territory, speaking of stuff I personally prefer, the Negotiator, slash the Orator. Dude, I love this class because it basically has the most broken mechanic from Tactics Ogre in it, and it's even better in this particular instance, and for some reason it's constantly ignored as like a gimmick that you only use for poaching things. And I'm talking about the recruit command. All their other stuff of being able to manipulate Brave and Faith and whatever else, great. Convincing a wizard that they can't wizard, that's hilarious to me in terms of an advanced class. And I love how the advanced classes in the original get weirder and weirder as you get more advanced. In the case of the Negotiator there, essentially what we're looking at is somebody that says, okay, you know what? In your particular case, like you suck at magic now. Like, you lose all your confidence and now you can't magic anymore, and I love that. But in terms of the invitation mechanic, 20 to 40% odds. It's basically the same thing that you see in Tactics Ogre at a baseline. It's the same thing you see locked in something like Tactics Ogre Reborn. It's more or less the odds that were there for the like classic Tactics Ogre and whatnot. And in all those cases, there was at least a cost associated. Classic Tactics Ogre, they had to have low health. At Tactics Ogre PSP, they had a time and a TP cost. In Reborn, they have an MP cost, as well as, again, a time cost. And again, they also have to be injured. And even in all those cases, it was considered overpowered. Here we have less units. There's absolutely no limitation on how well it works. It only seems to check the Zodiac compatibility thing. And they can do it for free? Like, that's insane. Not to mention they only have to have it go off once, and you've basically tilted the entire thing in your favor. That is hilarious. Like, to me, that is, broken in a very unorthodox way, and I love it to pieces for that. So, actually, they probably go up there with probably my favorite. Like, they're probably my favorite thing in this entire thing. Maybe, okay, them too. The two most vocal classes apparently are my favorite one in this. Alright, next for bench warmers. Your Materia Blade mechanic sucks, and I don't like using you. Go away. Alright. Actually, same thing for bench warmers for Rafa and Malik. Now, I will say I appreciate the mechanic that they look like they're trying to achieve a sort of artificial version of the Heaven Knight situation. That all of their abilities, they have similar debuffs, similar general vibes to the Heaven and Hell Knights, and they kind of look like they're just sort of a glitchy version of those particular effects going off at random. That part I appreciate. The fact that they don't require a particular weapon to do it also feels like they were trying to improve on that mechanic, but it required a sword to function for whatever reason. Again, that's cool from a lore perspective, but good God, are their skills unreliable otherwise. I've run them a few different runs. I've found myself disappointed every single time I did, whether the game was modded or not, in both versions. Like, they got improved in Wodel, like the PS1 version, it was just like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you here? Slightly more believable in Wodel, but even then, it's just like, you are a weird experiment, and I do not feel like running you. Like, as far as being rated based off how low or high their faith is certainly an interesting gimmick. Again, lore-wise, interesting general idea. It feels like an experiment that went a little bit disappointingly, but I appreciate the implication. It's cool, you know? It's cool. Alright, next probably my third favorite. Actually, shoot, this is probably my second favorite, actually. Dragoon. Basically, the tank thing, and then you... Okay, so, I mentioned before, I like taking the knight, giving them break skills, and then equipping a crossbow on them, and they're basically like Meliadul, but you get them way earlier, and also I just personally find it a lot cooler that they're breaking stuff with a crossbow rather than some magic bullshit. But then you take that and you expand it even further, saying, you know what, forget it. They don't have the crossbow. Instead of shooting little arrows, instead of shooting little pointy sticks, they have now created one big pointy stick, and they shoot themselves. Like, that's just so cool as a mechanic. Not to mention they're nigh indestructible. It's kind of annoying that Dragonheart requires being hit by something physical to activate, but also by that point you have bards, and they have infinite rebirth anyway, so yeah, just basically just indestructible walking spear tank. I love that. Not to mention jump is really good for avoiding things. It just feels like a very active and fun class. I love it. Like an active flying Poke, which is going to be the Dancer, mostly just because of their ability to auto frog the entire map. Kind of ridiculous. A little bit annoying as far as the time it takes for them to do their abilities. That's kind of why they're on the tail end of Hell Yeah. Like, it's a great unit for going and setting stuff up around Chapter 3 or so, and it's one unit that I personally appreciate being a decent bit more convenient to transition to in the PS1 version rather than Wodel here, just because the level requirements are a little bit kinder in that one. Mostly just creating the situation where you can basically get into them before Chapter 3, like you're just kind of getting there. So you just kind of can quickly pick them up along the way, whereas if you're trying to do the same thing in Wodel, it probably will take you a grind fight or two. Not the biggest deal in the world, just personally something that I prefer there. Alright, next for the traditionally great pile, we get the Summoner. They're basically an improvement of Black Mage and White Mage in many respects, having a wider area, not having friendly fire anymore, which could be a good or bad thing depending on your situation. Not to mention combining healing and whatever else abilities along with offensive ones, along with having stuff like Reflect. So they do kind of combine the, I guess, Black Mage, Time Mage, White Mage in a lot of interesting ways. But yeah, high expenses, also that weird horn thing. I don't know what's up with that. That just kind of weirds me out. It always feels like something's going to get injured by that thing. Not really a fan of it aesthetically. I'm sure there's some religious reason for it being there. I don't know. It just, something about them always struck me as odd. So they're traditionally great. I just prefer sticking with the basics. So there's that. Let's see. Next up for the pile, again, traditionally great, we got Melly. Gonna put her over here. Equipment skills are all well and cool. It's great to have a boss that joins you. Again, kind of janky and unreliable back in the PS1 version. A lot of her stuff is improved in the later ones, especially apparently Tic Tacs did some stuff with her. No clue what that is yet, but either way, she goes about over there. It's just she comes in so late that she doesn't really have a spot anyway, but whatever. It's cool that she joins. It's cool to see her there in the party. It's like, hey, there's a boss there. That's neat. I'm gonna stick with my generics. You do you. Next for the Hell Yeah box, we got Mr. Sid. Probably put him around there, give or take. Actually, no. I'm gonna put him under the Geomancer, like above the Monk, under the Geomancer. Somewhere about thereabouts as far as excitement for getting that particular unit. Like, they're really cool. You finally get all these sword abilities you saw everybody else using. You see kind of the king of all of them. You always heard him doing all this cool stuff out in the background. I always kind of found the sword abilities a little bit kind of meh, personally. Not in terms of power or what they can do. It's just, it feels like, I guess anime bullshit is the way to put it. It's just like, I swing sword, that thing explode. But again, for the others, it's just like, it's just something they were trained in. In his case, the dude's basically a frickin' Jedi, so it works. Like, he has the gravitas to go and back it up. In the case of Agrias, I don't know, I'm not really feeling it. I always kind of feel like I would have preferred Agrias more if she was just, like, a better version of the Knight, rather than having, you know, all the crazy laser swords and whatnot. Again, just, that's a me thing, alright? I kind of want, if somebody has those kinds of abilities... Was it talking about Melly, or was it... I don't know. I forgot what we were talking about. We'll assume that hopefully that thought was finished before random interruption. Okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on here. Reyes also kind of typically... personally falls into the benchwarmer category, again, just because of how late she shows up. I just noticed this list doesn't have Worker 8. The fuck is up with that? Yeah, this is one that I found on Tier Maker, and then also noticed that they didn't even have Ramza on there. I wonder what else is missing. I think it's only Worker 8 and Ramza that are missing from this thing, but yeah, Worker 8 probably would go into exactly okay. I do like using him because he's a cool robot. Um, in fact, actually, hold on just a moment. There. I mean, that's the thing. He's not like great, but he's exactly the top of okay. He's one of those units that I'll use for fun, but probably not necessarily stick around in the long term for the party. Just like around the time that he ends up joining, I usually keep him around for, I don't know, like 7-8 hours or so, and then others end up kind of running past him and whatnot. So there's that. I think there's a couple playthroughs I still kept him around towards the tail end. I just like that he's a cool robot guy. And all right, then from there we also have the one of the other ones that's gonna be up there. Probably personal excitement goes. Okay, we're gonna put him or put them roughly around there, which is gonna be the samurai with all their draw thing. And in my personal opinion, okay. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, obviously, but in my personal opinion, this makes a lot more sense as far as a traditional, sort of like a natural generic evolution into the whole sword knight or sword laser knight thingy than a lot of the sort of dedicated blank knight classes do, because in their particular case they're using a lot of similar abilities, but they're doing it in a more interesting way. They're utilizing a lot of the stuff that they learned up to that point from a variety of different classes to basically just do these cool AoE explosion moves instead of having other trade-offs. They may potentially break the weapon while going and doing so, and that feels like a cool balancing thing to me. As far as I do feel like maintenance probably should have been one of those things that prevented such things from happening because of the fact that you can't replenish some of those weapons. But again, given that the story has a definitive start and end and not really much of a kind of long-term post-game type of thing, technically, I guess you could argue, like it's one of those things that... Okay, again, I'm not meaning to criticize that version, but as far as Wodel goes, as far as the post-game goes, just the idea that that there is any kind of post-game extra content, whatever else stuff whatsoever, instead of a definitive start and an end, means that instead of having that sort of classic RPG moment of you have, like, let's say your mass immune or whatever else, and you don't necessarily want to use it until you're at that one critical moment, and then if you do, and it breaks... If it's, a definitive start and end, that's just sort of the end of that conversation. It was used at a critical moment. You remember that you used it at that moment. And it was just this desperate thing, desperate one-off attack. And cool. Okay, that was a cool narrative, unique moment. But then if there's a post-game type of thing, then it's like you've permanently removed that option from yourself forever. Design-wise, I'm just not a big fan of that particular thing, so either having the ability to replenish them as a result or, having maintenance cover that particular destruction thing would have been nice, but it is interesting to see that they're kind of, that they're a case where you think you're running a hell of a lot of money by that point in the game, and then you start realizing, like, oh shoot, if I want to use these guys, it's going to be pretty expensive to actually upkeep them. On top of that, actually, one of those other kind of cool things about it is that unlike the other blank knight type of classes, they're not limited to their to keeping a particular weapon around, which means that as far as I'm concerned, their skill set is a vast improvement on a lot of theirs. Yeah, it may not be as directly powerful and whatnot, it may require more of a kind of magical inclination or whatever else, but it's just, to me it feels like it makes a lot more sense in terms of a sort of like natural technological improvement on this stuff. Like if we're looking at the through line of you got the 50 Years War and like Sid's representing the top end of all of that kind of stuff, people realizing that they could use a lot of their sort of like latent magical ability type of stuff, but if they channel it out of a weapon with enough quality metals or whatever the hell else, they might potentially be able to cast stuff for free rather than expending themselves, using MP or what have you, however you want to science that bullshit out. Because we see from a lot of different classes that the better they get, the less they need stuff like MP, right? So MP almost feels like it's just sort of like raw exertion for using some of those abilities, which narratively, again, is pretty darn cool, but in that particular case, we see different evolutions of it happening in the background, with, Rafa and Malik having their sort of weird defective version, the Samurai having a version that tries to channel it out of a different type of weapon, which sort of explodes it out. It's just interesting to see that particular concept explored there. I kind of wish they would have explained it a bit better, but I guess, it's magic, I don't have to explain shit, is kind of the reasoning given. But either way, I appreciate their skill set a lot more than the other, like, blank sword type skills, just because you don't have to equip a sword for it. You can equip more interesting stuff Swords are practical, but kind of boring. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of boring, Onion Knight, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? It's just duller than a freaking like khaki-colored rock. What is your problem? Go away. And this is an archetype that I would love in almost any other game. It's just the class that can equip anything. Cool, but it's so boring. It's just so dull, especially with their like in the mobile version where you just get all their equipment and there's no build up to it. Like there's no, you just go and buy their stuff and you just have ultimate overpowered unit guy that can't die now. It's just so dull. Meanwhile, on the flip side, we got the Mime, which is, I don't even know where to put you. I guess I'm gonna put it into hell. Yeah, it's okay. The Mime. I suck at using these. Mostly because they usually end up being acquired so dang late that I don't end up bothering to use them. But the idea of the Mime as a mastery class is just frickin' sublime. Like, the fact that they're not saying, here's this thing that is, like, insanely overpowered and you go shoot lasers everywhere and whatever else. They're like, yeah, they're physically an absolute powerhouse. They can channel the abilities of any other class through themselves, but but the fact that you basically almost lose control of them and like they're going and copying everybody else's actions, the mastery that it takes to go utilize one of these is so cool for, the highest end class there. Like, yeah, I know some people min-max these for the purpose of stats or what have you, but like just the sheer mastery that it takes to use this kinds of class justifies the requirements that it takes to get there. Because as far as having a proper ending class to the whole thing, I cannot think of anything more fitting and out of the box and just downright weird than the Mime. Since most of us haven't really bothered to use this guy very much, the general gist is just they will copy whatever your previous friendly unit did. Whether it's firing a bow, they just sort of shoot an arrow. Whether it's going and attacking somebody, they'll follow that same pattern and attack somebody. Whether it's doing a song or a dance or whatever else, they'll double up on the effect of all of that. So effectively, they're just kind of doubling up on your entire party, which means that you can direct them in really weird ways, just doing a maneuver that I can only... The closest thing I can think of to think about a more well-known metaphor for this whole thing is whatever the hell that one arrow dude was from that Guardians of the Galaxy thing a while ago. It's like directing this one unit to just go and weave their way through everything, just like crushing everything in their wake. It's such a weird unit, but I cannot think of a cooler master unit for this game. At the same time, same thing for something like the calculator. They're broken, but broken in such a good way that you basically start and end your wizard line by them realizing like, okay, maybe I can improve on this physical world medicine or whatever else by doing all this magical stuff. They go through all this magical training and whatever else, only to come to the realization of like, you know what? All of this stuff is just science anyway. Like, fuck MP. I'm gonna calculus my way to a nuke. Like, it's just so cool from a like implementation standpoint, all across everything. I love it. Okay, I just really love the overall idea there. And again, it's broken, should be broken. Love it for that. It's such a weird, unique idea for a class that it has to go there. Okay, and then lastly, I've got a story for this one. Lastly, I'm going to do Dark Knight and Exactly Okay. Like, personally, okay, from their implementation and whatever else, I get what they were going with, but I don't personally like it. Actually, funny note on this, to explain the thumbnail real quick, the male Dark Knight looks almost exactly like this old sprite from an old DOS game forever ago called Kids of Carindale. The first time I saw the Dark Knight, after like days of grinding, I saw the thing and almost burst out laughing. It's like, holy shit, I found Elmo. What's he doing here? Is he going to go start selling all his generics out to a lumberjack? What are we doing here? Nobody's going to get that reference. But the point is, also, you probably shouldn't. Kids of Canada is getting a remake pretty soon, and I don't know how they're getting around an M rating if they don't remove that scene. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the Dark Knight real quick, because this one's got a little bit of a story. So let me check on something real quick, and then it's story time. All right, so Final Fantasy Tactics is something that has been around with me for decades at this point. All right, essentially back, what is it, like 30-ish years ago at this point almost. Um, it was something that actually originally had picked up because I was looking for Tactics Ogre. And I was looking for Tactics Ogre because I was looking for a follow-up after loving the hell out of Legend of Dragoon, which I was interested in because one day I went to go visit my brother's bandmate, and sure enough, he was playing Legend of Dragoon. I was like, holy crap, these spear combos look sick as hell. And then I end up running into it at the store at a Sam's Club one day. They had a demo of it there. I was like, this is freaking cool as hell. So my brother and I go and scrounge up what we can. Turns out we have enough to get it, so we end up picking the thing up, and yeah, end up completing it together. And then I'm like, man, what the hell was that game? How do I find more like it? And so I go and I look it up, and it's classed as an RPG. So, end up going and looking up what RPGs are, and for some reason, one of the things that it brings up there is Final Fantasy Tactics, as well as Tactics Ogre. I don't know why Tactics Ogre Knight of Lotus specifically was at the top of the list. I don't know if I just typed something weird or what, but for some reason, that was there. Now, I love the look of it, I love the UI for it, I love the portraits, everything about it just was exactly what I was looking for. It was on the GBA, it was like, man, I could have this thing wherever I went. That looks cool as hell. Like, I don't know what an RPG is exactly, but if it's part of that category, sure, what the hell, why not? I want it. So, months of going to go look for Knight of Lotus at the store, and I find nothing. Like, it just was never in stock. And so I keep going back to this, I think it was like GameFAQs or something, but I keep going back to this page. Maybe it was IGN, I don't know. It was some relatively still around publisher at the time, or not publisher, but publication at the time. And I keep looking at those Knight of Lotus pictures, like it's like that old like Wolverine meme, just staring at it day after day. Like, I want that, but I don't know how to get it. And I keep seeing Final Fantasy Tactics over in the background. And the thing is, there's a little bit of background here too, because my brother had brought back Final Fantasy VII one day, and he was showing it to me. He was like, man, this looks really cool, but why is this turn-based? I find this incredibly boring. And so in my brain, it was just like, yes, I look up to my brother, and my brother says Final Fantasy bad. I don't know what Final Fantasy is, but he says bad, so I don't like. So I personally found myself preferring FF8 over FF7 after originally starting the series kind of sort of. Well, I started the series at Tactics and then got 10, but anyways, besides the point. So eventually I look at Final Fantasy Tactics and I'm like, this looks just like this Knight of Lotus thing, but it's on a PS1. We're about to go leave on a cross-country trip that was originally supposed to be the whole family. It ended up just being my crazy mom and I, and yeah, so I'm looking around like, I want to play this thing. So I go and I talk to my brother, and I'm like, you know what, I want to play this thing, and there's unfortunately no way to put the PlayStation in the car. I was gonna say PS1, but like, hey, the PS2 didn't exist yet. Like, there's no way to drive around with that thing, and this other thing's on the Game Boy, and I can never seem to find it. So that kind of sucks. And so he comes up with this idea, because he's got this old CRT laying around. He finds a way to go and get it all on one power supply, and just basically hooks it up to the center of the car. So I'd picked up FFT. Absolutely loved it, though I did spend a week talking to my friend at this opera house there over how I couldn't get past the very first fight because of the whole stupid thing of just like, I couldn't figure out how L1 R1 worked, so I wasn't aware that the bumpers existed, and so I'm just there trying to figure out how I'm supposed to beat it with just Ramza and Delita. It took ages until I figured out that there were actually other units there. But yeah, my whole stupid self aside, ultimately this whole scenario results in having a PS1 and Final Fantasy Tactics in the car for this extended road trip, just like listening to audiobooks and ABBA in the background, playing some FFT. The thing was, though, in between, there were a lot of those moments where it was just sort of like me in the car by myself, and I would go and turn the sound up to go listen to the soundtrack from this game, and it's just like, man, this sounds like freaking magical. I grew up with a classical background. I was like, this sounds really good. This sounds like proper instruments and everything. I'm loving this. I wonder if I can go back and learn to play this on a violin or something. And anyways, this goes on for quite some time. So just listening to various books, I still remember to this day the weirdness of listening to Desperation out in the middle of the desert, while going and doing the Gafgarian execution mission over and over. So, oh yeah, no, I did actually end up beating that to the sound of Abba's "Lay All Your Love on Me" in the background. Anyways, weird background for this whole thing. So I ended up completing it before the end. And yeah, to end up playing some Gauntlet for the rest of the trip because it was pretty close to the tail end of that trip at that point. But yeah, whole cross country trip to go see the country. My only takeaways were, wow, Grand Canyon is cool and has great corn food. I don't like Las Vegas. Everything melts as soon as you step outside. And man, Final Fantasy Tactics was a great game. And so for years after that, I had it, like once I got a TV in my room, I had it, always kind of had it there. Had my PS1, would just sit there with my like cheap noodles, going and playing some FFT over and over. I remember when I first found out that you had a class that could actually go and recruit people, and then found that one dragon that you could find kind of on that little northern strip at the very beginning. It was quite an exciting time. It's like my entire second playthrough was just trying to figure out how to make a basic dragon work. Totally didn't understand the whole like monster mechanic whatsoever, but I was gonna try to make that thing work. Dang it. So, anyways, like that game and I had a long history. I loved listening to its soundtrack in the background. Loved listening to the sounds of it. Loved trying to recreate those sounds from other things. And it was one of the reasons, just like To, that I just kind of got into this whole thing of just loving trying to create medieval weaponry to see if it worked the same way. Like down to the point that for some reason throwing spears was just a thing I did. I mean, it had this like little target. My dad did like bow shooting and whatnot, and so I just went and like crafted chair legs into spears and would go chuck them into that whole thing. Made like makeshift bows to go shoot into the thing to try to figure out if the range formulations and whatever else on longbows was accurate. But anyways, point is this like it along with To, were massive inspirations for a lot of stuff, back in the day. And yes, I know it doesn't have throwing spears for some reason. It's just like that was a connection that came to mind. I don't know why. Kid brain gonna kid brain. It's the same reason why after I played FF10, I tried figuring out how to do cool flip shots with a soccer ball off of a tree. Yeah, jet shot, not really possible in real life. I did manage to go and potentially injure myself several times trying to do it. But moving on, as we carry along there, though, years later, I get my first PSP, and we're traveling the country at this point. Basically, it's like a family real estate kind of nonsense. Hated a lot of it, but the point was, I had gotten my PSP, and I had this like silver Daxter edition. Had picked up Daxter with it. Had picked up Siphon Filter. Let's see, Vice City Stories, and then Worms Open Warfare 2. And Siphon Filter was Siphon Filter. It did the same old thing that it did back since the PS1. Solid games, not necessarily something that you remember too much. I think the stealth mission back in the PS1 one was a lot more memorable to me than the entirety of the PSP library for those ones. But yeah, Vice City Stories, love that. Open Warfare 2, I still play to this day. And then one day, I find out that they're remaking Final Fantasy Tactics on the PSP. Then I find out it's already out. It's been out for a while. Like, how do I not own this yet? So I was like, man, I freaking loved FFT. I need to go try this. Because, for context, I still have the same problem of you can't fit a PS1 in your pants. Yes, that's what the PSP was, but my logic was that I can't have a PS1 with me. I didn't have my PS1, didn't have the PS2. Those were all back in the apartment. We were basically traveling most months out of the year. I was doing all my school just homeschooling from a laptop, and finding new ways to procrastinate on the internet every day. But yeah, never had those consoles with me, and so that was always a bit of an issue. So then I find out that FFT is coming to the PSP, and it was like a dream come true. I could not have been more excited just running down the halls of that Target. It was like going in my business suit and everything else, giddy like a dang 5-year-old to go get a hold of this thing, and I do. They have a copy of Word of Lines there, and I'm excitedly walking out with this thing and go and take it back to the hotel, and man, was so dang excited to get started, and then immediately, as far as the first cutscene, not even the first cutscene goes, like I start listening to this music. I'm jamming out to the music. I'm like, I remember this sounding a hell of a lot better, but you know what? Maybe it's just the speakers on the PSP. Fine. And then in the middle of that, listening to the music, we get cut straight to a cutscene where people suddenly start screaming way louder than the music was. And then I start disliking the cutscenes. I'm like, this had so many new features that they were talking about on the box. Please stop yelling at me when I'm trying to listen to the music. On top of that, then Gaff starts throwing out abilities, and man, the game slows to a crawl. I'm like, I don't know if I got a defective copy. I don't know if my PSP is gonna die from playing this because it's stressing out too hard or what. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Why is it so slow? This thing looks like it's suffering trying to run. And this continues. And so I eventually write it off as just like, okay, you know what, fine. Stuff on the PSP, it's a small console, I've been through the whole Game Boy library of things before, I know how stuff boils down to a handheld, it's fine, we'll just kind of carry on with it, turn down the volume as soon as a fight ends in case there's an ambush from another cutscene. But then, like, at this time we're still traveling around quite a decent bit, and at some point, there's a post I see online basically talking about this whole Dark Knight thing. Like, you can do the whole Gafgarian thing. You can go get all of his abilities on somebody. You got to go through this whole process. You got to like basically go and more or less take a unit and turn them into a just like soul-based combine harvester out on the fields there. Just have this one dude just go eat like crystal after crystal until they eventually turn into this thing, which I'm assuming they just got lucky with what things spawned in order for that to happen. But whatever. Because the unlock to go and get this thing. Sorry, another random interruption. So, basically the unlock to get the Dark Knight, for those unfamiliar or that maybe don't remember, is more or less to max out half the dang classes in the game. It's either max rank or level 8 on multiple different classes, from like Knight to Dragoon to I think like Samurai, Black Mage, all that kind of thing. Forgetting off the top of my head right now. But basically, most of the classes end up, or not most of, but like roughly about half the classes, the non-hyper advanced classes get maxed out, and then you also have to go and consume 20 crystals. Which, by the way, on multiple videos I had mentioned that it was actually 25, not 20. That is my bad. I genuinely thought it was 25. But yeah, no, it's basically meant to be a reference to the classic Tactics Ogre, where in order to unlock the Terror Knight, you would have to get 25 kills. In this case, it's down to 20 crystals. Though, two things. One thing, that mechanic is never really used anywhere else, so it's weird that would even be a distinction. Second thing, though, I do appreciate that they actually double up on that particular reference by giving them access to, well, axes. It's not very, not very useful, but hey, it is cool. Like, they're probably the one use case that you can make for axes being potentially a very good option, because you can combine it with their other abilities to, get more powerful as their health goes down and whatnot. But either way, it's a neat little reference, I suppose, though it is extra funky that none of their abilities can be used with it. Like, they had the opportunity right there to be like, no, they don't need the swords. They've improved it. They've done the samurai thing. They've learned from the whole samurai thing to not need the sword anymore, but no. Instead, that's not the thing. Like, they could have had the option there, but they didn't. So, long story short, so I'm going through this whole process, having this unit go and repeatedly eat a bunch of random NPCs going out in Mandalia Plains and whatnot. I had gotten to this thing where I tried having them increment the kill counter by repeatedly killing the same thing over and over, but then find out later that you're supposed to actually go eat the crystal, but then it also doesn't count if they weren't the one that did the kill, but then it also doesn't spawn a crystal 50% of the time, and it has nothing to do with whether or not you did the kill, but you still have to be the one that did the kill. It's like, I get what they were going for. I was just like, this is somebody that went a different way, that acquired all of their skills artificially by just going and repeatedly absorbing the skills of other units. And in my personal opinion, this would have worked really well if they had picked different classes to have needed to have maxed out, because a lot of the stuff that you have maxed out there is stuff that you won't necessarily see spawning that often. Nobody's going to naturally kind of acquire this. Like, even something like the Mime, if somebody's screwing around hard enough, they might eventually get all of those things done. Because I know personally, I did actually end up unlocking the Mime naturally at the same time that I was trying to get the Dark Knight, and that's one of many reasons that I think their placement is kind of weird. Because when it comes to unlocking things naturally, most of the stuff is going to be pretty logical in terms of when you get it, right? And even in the case of the mime, I had somebody that had learned a bunch of different classes, but then I wanted to see what would happen if I just went and started going back through the basics, just starting to max things out, and was like, oh shoot, that's how you get the mime. I had meant to look it up at some point, but I ended up just getting the mime there. Anyway, so even the mime is something that you can naturally get a hold of, but in the case of the Dark Knight, you specifically have to go through all these oddly specific hoops. And if it was, for example, that they didn't need to be the one that inflicted the kill, that they were only absorbing, souls of stuff, and it was just like corrupting them over time, that would be a really cool angle for the thing, if it was a case that they weren't limited to swords specifically, it would be it would be an interesting angle to the thing. If, let's say, those classes were the common things that you would see spawning around, so that again somebody would naturally get a hold of the thing, I feel like it would have fit better. I know it's meant to be like the ultimate end all be all, like this is the final class you get a hold of kind of thing. I'm getting to that in a bit of a second. Anyway, so to continue on with the story. So I end up getting over the whole frame rate thing, end up questioning whether or not I actually even ever liked FFT in the first place over the course of playing through Wordle the first time. Because again, the frame rate thing was annoying. I'm blaming that on hardware limitations at that point, but like the music, it doesn't sound right. How was I viewing this as this massive orchestral thing? Again, classical background, I was a youth orchestra violinist and whatnot, and it's just it seemed weird to me. It seemed really weird that I was misremembering it that much. And then finally one day I end up getting back to my old PS1, and I pop in the old copy there, and sure enough, it's like it's night and day. Now I don't remember exactly what order the next few things happened in, but like it was kind of that moment that cemented this in my head as like the inferior PSP version, and then you had the original with like way better presentation and whatnot. This was cemented even further with getting a hold of Battlefront 2 and realizing my favorite level wasn't there anymore. But yeah, it sort of kept hopping into my head of like this is just a console that has compromises just like the Game Boys did. It's fine, whatever. We'll just deal with it, right? So anyways, I end up unlocking this Dark Knight over time, end up grinding and grinding and grinding for days. End up traveling along in the back of a car for days, largely because my job at the time was basically like taking notes while going through dilapidated properties and whatnot. And so there was a lot of time, just like a lot of downtime sitting in the back. Anyway, so end up getting this thing, and it was just like instant disappointment, because after everything up to that point, alright, let's see if I can get through the rest of the story real quick. So, it's like days later at this point. Finally end up getting the thing, look at it, end up practically laughing because of how much it looks like like that old DOS game there. End up looking at it, and it's just like, this is it? Like, all the other advanced stuff, they got some cool new mechanic, they got some cool new ideas going on. This guy's like, he hits harder? He does the whole health sacrificing thing? Like, this is just like some basic beginner type of stuff here. How is this? What all that effort was leading up to. It's like, yeah, you kind of get the whole gaff thing, but at that point, like, it would have taken far less time to just get Sid or just beat the game or whatever else. It's just, after all that effort, it felt like such a letdown. And then, go figure, that was compounded even harder because the very next day, I'm going on a flight from Denver back to California, and yeah, end up falling asleep trying to figure out what on earth it was that made this thing so dang special to people. And just end up falling asleep on the plane. PSP ends up getting stolen. Obviously, TSA is never really going to be much help, considering that they're more likely to just take your stuff than actually return it. But yeah, so that ends up being a disappointment. I end up picking up the game again, end up going and getting the dang thing built up once again. Like, this is part of the reason that FFT is my most bought thing at all times, because like I had 3 copies of the original by that point because I kept losing the disc. First Wordle copy gets stolen, second one gets lost, third one's off PSN, then I get the iOS version, the Android version. Yeah, anyways, point is, both times I end up getting it there, ends up being a massive disappointment. Lately on my refresher playthrough, I guess I found a little bit more enjoyment out of it, courtesy of just using it to kind of boost Mustadio to hopefully have more of a shot. He's never going to have a shot, but at least theoretically he might have a shot at some point. But anyways, yeah, the point is, I was just found it such a disappointment for all the effort. The mechanic, if it at least had mentioned any part of how it works, like as far as absorbing stuff to go get themselves darker and darker until they're this corrupted unit, that would be cool. if they didn't have to achieve the kill first, or if there was any counter anywhere to indicate that this was even a mechanic. It's just, it feels so weirdly implemented. Anyways, so yeah, that's about that. So that's all of them in a nutshell. And yeah, I gotta get going, so y'all have yourselves a good one. I hope this was as entertaining for you as it was for me, and yeah, y'all take care. Have a good one. Later.